Okay, by my calculation, we got to page Shin Nun Tes, and we're reading over here. It's a continuation like of what we were learning yesterday. So that idea, this was really the planting. I think he meant the idea of the 9 tikkunim of the beard of Zeranpin, while the Zeranpin was in the womb of his mother. So Hazras HaTikuni Dikna, so the secret of the planting of the Tikkuning of the Dikna B'soch Ima canal. Oz Ne'ember B'Pasuk, now you hear in the Pasuk. He said V'Hichein, so it says and let it be, and it came to be like that. Shehu, so his Chavos V'Gilui Tikuni Dikna the Zeranpin. So this V'Hichein. So what we got with Chain is I don't know, it's a number 70. So let's go on. V'yehi is number 25, Vayehi, but this is number 31. I'm not sure exactly if there's anything there. He says, so his chavos v'gilu tikuni dikna the zer anpen be'ez ha'ivor, so that's really what I said, what he said yesterday. V'lechein Amar Khan, so now it says over here, Milas Yehi Hamora al Haschalas Gilu Shem Chavaya. So here we're not start. This word Yehi corresponds to the beginning of the revelation of Havaya. Now I'm not sure what Havaya has to do with the beard of Zer Anpin, but he says it has to do with the beginning of now starting to be able to see that there are actually letters there, Shal Zer Anpin, and that means that Zer Anpin is being manifest. By Inyan Huki B'milas Yehi, those two words with the Yud K Yud, but Maromas B'chinush Shem Shalom, it's a reference once again to the concept of a complete name. Complete name Shal Shnei Shemos via Elokim. Now how does that work? She is boy. He's got to explain that. He says Yud Eloah Yud Tetor. You have a Yud on the top, you have a Yud on the bottom. So I guess he means at the beginning and at the end. He says, Ki hinera b'milas yehi, yesh te yudin. Shehem sod yud elyon, secret the upper yud, shall Eric Anpin, of Eric Anpin. Shehu b'pechin shem kuvaya elyon, which is a concept of an upper yud ke vav ke. The sod yud vav daled. Now, going back into that, how he had explained how that all could work. He says, that's the, let me excuse me, V'sod, that's the top one. So V'sod Yud Tachton, he says, Shal Zer Anpin, Shul B'Pechin B'Shem Elokim, which is really corresponds the other side. The Fi Erech in relationship to Eric Anpin. Let me just see that again. He said Yud Tachton Shal Zer Anpin, so that's the Yud Tachton represents Zer Anpin. Zer Anpin is the aspect of the Shem Elokim, in relationship, if you look at it in the relationship to Eric Anpin, because there's a big squeeze that goes over here, my explanation. And so now we see these two Yud, and there's a remes here, shall milas v'yitzer. So we have v'yitzer. For Yitzar, he pronounced it v'yitzer. V'yitzer. He says, Hanizka v'pasuk v'yitzer Hashem Elokem, where we see that Hashem formed as Adam. He made the man. There's two Yuds in that word. He says, this is really talking about gestation, pregnancy. Because that is when this double yud comes into play. So this is the concept. We're going to think about what it means to have a form within the form. I think this means that it becomes more physical. Kolomar tzuras Eric Anpin besoch tzuras Zer Anpin. So now Tzuras Erech Anpin is hidden completely, but we understand that the Yud Ke Vav Ke comes from there. It gets manifest over here in Zah. And then it becomes the concept of the complete name. Shal Shnei Shem V'Savaya Elokim, which come from the two names, which are Havaya and Elokim. So I'm still saying where he showed us the actual spelling of a Yud Ke Vav Ke, with the Nekudas of Elokim, that was the word from yesterday. But over here we're saying that the word Yehi, and then the word V'yitzar, Yitzer, he says, Shalom Shem V'Savaya Elokim, because it represents that too. Elokim. So then the Prashat goes of V'yitzar Havaya Elokim. So that's how it goes together. The Haindach B'Shem Havaya Elyon, the Eric Anpin, V'shem Elokim Dezer Anpin, relatively speaking, it's an Elokim. Yud Elo, Yud Teto. V'hidere b'shtei shemos Elo Havavaya Elokim b'rumazim b'shtei Yudin shall v'yetzer. So he says that's also another remedy to them, the fact that he says that he actually, so if he wants to say that, then he has it twice. So you have Yitzer and then you have Avaya Elokim. So over here he says also from V'yitzer you could see the same Avaya Elokim concept. He says Shehem Sod Yud Elyon de Erik Anpin, V'yud Tachton de Zer Anpin, it goes together. So then you have this word Yehi, Yud Elo, Yud Teto. V'hu gam sod shnei yudin shall midas yehiv. So therefore, it's the secret of the two yudin that go along with the name Yehi. Shehem sod yud elyon yud tachton shall b'chinush shem shalom kanal. So he likes this metaphor. So the concept of the yud elyon yud tachton. So he wants to say that they're both yuds. I'm thinking, so they're both yuds. That is, the Erik Anpin is really the original yud, but you can't find it. You don't know where it comes from, but then it gets manifest. So therefore, there's one up above you can't find, the one that's down below that you see. Hey, but Gavaihu, but in between them there's this hey. Now we understand Shamias Melis Yehi. Va'amnan. Yesh gam oz hey bein shtei yudin elo, but there's also a hey between these two yudin. V'hi gam kain b'sod shem shalom, and this K also represents a complete name too. Ki he sod Elokim shall bina. So this K usually represents bina by itself. So this is the name of Elokim of bina. Kamashi yivor lochalon, we'll say later on. We'll see that later. V'amar says further, Klal of the Shlimu. So you want to talk about its completion, its perfection. What we mean when we say Shem Shalom. And we want to say that the time that with this concept is coming together is in the time of gestation. And once again, it's the same metaphor. It's the concept of giving birth. The giving birth is let me just read that again. He says, Vahain, so we say, look, it's the sod of the time of Eber. Vahain b'shas leda, and also they are at the time of birth, b'sod havaya b'nikud elokim. Is that what he wants to say, that this is the havaya now that we give birth to this havaya? He's telling me this is Zer Anpin. Zer Anpin is this Havaya, and with the Nikud of Elokim. So now you actually see the physical form. That's the Vlad. That's a Zer Anpin, is a Yudke Vavke. So Reb Shalim, the level to call star. Akim calls that, but even so, Zer Anpin, who is now born out in the concept of Havaya Elokim, Ein Kan Shem Shalom Legami. Why? Because Sad. Ki Iker Shem Shalom, who be his galosh ne shemus avaya elokim, because the main thing is that those names themselves actually see those names, but fairish, explicitly. Shehu rak la'achash zer anpin malvishas Erik Anpin. So the only time that he becomes, I'm going to read this little piece so I can understand it, but the way it's saying is that the only time Shazer Anpin Malvishas Erik Anpin, when you actually see that Zer Anpin is a Havaya and an Elokim. Does he mean to say not menuked like that, but that there's actually two separate names there? Is that what he's saying? The Ozhul Tachlis is Kalvos Racham and Bedenim, because when the two of them are actually there, that's when you have Racham and Bedenim in the same place. Mikol Tzad can bevor the as we've explained. So I'm working on the assumption that he means that first you have Havaya Elokim in the form of Havaya, and it's just Menuka differently. Then it has to develop, though, into actually two separate names. I think that's kind of what I'm getting, but anyway, Valma Odi says furthermore, is Aker Mahai Aser Oshnado. Which means that it becomes uprooted, this name. Ki Kadeshi is Gala Shem Shalom. So you need the whole name, which is Havaya Elokim, Legamre, Mikol Tzad, all around. In other words, that everything should be, this should be the final product. And the Eker is there Anpin Mevatin Emo. So therefore, Zer Anpin has to actually be ejected, uprooted from the mother's womb. So the pasuk v'totzei haaretz desha. Now before he said that desha refers to the beard of Zer Anpin. Ki yitzis Zer Anpin v'vent and imo. Who could do Misakiris and the tea and the vent in the haaretz? So this is very similar as plucking a seedling. It's just a little, very small plant as it starts to grow. Again, the tea and the vent in the haaretz from the, let's say, so to speak, the womb of the earth, right? So he says, so we see that Zer Anpin comes out at that point. It is plucked out. The limbs of Zer Anpin developed. Al Yadei Ima. She helps him because she pours in juice, energy into Zer Anpin, which causes him to grow. V'ishtiru ba'achara. So then what happens is that now you have a Zer Anpin who is being fed by Ima. And he said, and I'm thinking that he's still going on the concept that this is now an Elokim. Well, it was originally an Elokim, upper yud or lower yud, that kind of thing, in relationship to Eric Anpin. Now he's out, and he's by himself. So then he is replanted. So it's like I used to have the big garden, and you have to weed out a certain amount of the seedlings because they grow right next to each other. They can't develop that way. So you start plucking them out. But you can also take them, put it someplace else. And that's what you also do. And that's what's happening here. He said, where is that? It has to be attached then to the tibur of Eric Anpin, Olamata. In other words, it has to stick onto Eric Anpin. That, he's telling us the secret over here to develop Zer Anpin depends on it being born out and then coming to attach itself to the core, which is Eric Anpin. Shuhu Amakum Shazer Anpin, Malvish as Eric Anpin, which is the place where he's Malvish. Now there's some question about, I think we saw that in Shosha Yam way back when, or maybe another time, that Abba Ve'ima, he says in actuality they go all the way down to the karka of Vitzilus. So and it's not that they stop at the Tibor, which is what this is implied, that down below, because maybe there's a svara, or they hold that the Tibor from the Tibor Lamata is empty, and it's a place for Zer Anpin, but I saw, and that's the way we talk, but I saw that the Sharsha Yam felt that it goes all the way down. That is Abba Ve'ima go all the way down. So therefore, what is Zer Anpin? If that's the case, what is Zer Anpin attaching himself to? He's attaching himself to Abba Ve'ima, not Eric Anpin. But over here it says he attaches himself to Eric Anpin, and in this position of I'm trying to think that I heard his explanation. His explanation is that they actually nullified at that place because it becomes a place of Zer Anpin. So I'm not sure how that works. They are panimi to Zer Anpin. Let's go on. V'az mizgala ika shem shalom, and that's when it attaches to Eric Anpin for the Tiba Lamata. That's when you say the root of the shem shalom shel shnei shem v'zavaya elokema, those two names. That's the root of that happens right there. In other words, this development of these two names. K'sev v'kamosha kasav v'yita Hashem Elokim, and Hashem planted in the Gan Eden Mekadim Pirusha. So what does that mean? Shema'atza nata as Zer Anpin Nikra Gan. So now he says Zer Anpin is the garden. Okay, call him the garden. He says Etzel Hamakom Nikra Eden. So he says he plants it, and in that place a Nikra, which is the Etzel Makom Nikra Eden Mekadim. Shuhu Chochma Kadumah. What is Aiden Mekadim? Aiden usually goes with the name Chochma. So Aiden and Chochma, he says, which is called the original Chochma. Muach Chochma Stinmaah. That is talking about the Muach, which is called the Chochma Stinmaah. The Eric Anpin and Nikra Aiden Kadam. If I just could bear with me and just trying to gather these words, he said, V'yita Hashem Elokim Gan be'edin mekadim. So originally it sounds like he planted in Chochma. Pirusha she'ama'atzel nata ezer anpin anikra gan etzel amakom anikra Eden, next to the place which is called Eden mekadim. What is that? So that's where he plants Zer Anpin shehu Chochma keduma l'mur Chochma Stinmaah. The Eric Anpin anikra Eden Aden Kondon, which is called the original, I guess, Aden. V'yasem sham esa Adam, and then he places the man Asher Yatzar, that he created. So he said, B'pirush sham b'makom haniskar, which is the place from the Tibur Lamata. Now, how he skipped over to Chochmah, I don't know. Maybe he's answering the question that I asked, that Yaakov Hillel said, that Abbas actually goes all the way down, not just to the Tibur. Maybe he's answering that question. I don't know. Why he said Pirush Sham b'makom haniskar v'yasem es Adam, which is there on pin Asher Yitzer. There's not a double yud here. It's a Yatzar. Also bebet and imo, that he created. So this is the concept that Zer Anpin gets planted on that Tibur Lamata. So what it had to do with this Chochmah Mekedem or Kadum, I'm not sure. Let's go on. He says, now it says, let's read the top part, because I haven't been doing that. I was just trying to get oriented here. It says, Bain Yud, the Yud, the Yehi. So there's a Hey between those two Yudin. I want to say Yidin. Okay? Nashba the Pardashka. So then there's breath or air coming out from the nose, the Chatika, the Zer Anpin, that comes all the way from Atika, which usually means Erik Anpin to Zer Anpin. Below Rucholo is Kain. But if there's no room there, there's no breath there, it can't stay. But hey ish takalo. But what does hey do? Hey organizes everything, incorporates. Hey ilah, hey tata, back to that concept where he said about the yud, there's an upper yud and a lower yud. What does he mean by upper hey and a lower hey? They said, ha adni elokim bekitu de katvin. Now we had this word kitu de katvin before, and I'm really not clear as to what it means. So now we'll come over and we'll try to find out. So he says the hey bein yud, the yehi. Let's talk about that hey. Ha'os hey ha'omedes bein shtei yudin, in our phrase yehi. He says shall milas yehi mashpa de pardashka de ratika de lezeira de anpin. Who sewed os hey shall chotim Erik Anpin. So this is the secret of the letter hey of Erik Anpin. Let me see who. Secret so os hey shall chotim, of the nose of Erik Anpin, hanikra pardashka datika, which is called the pardashka of Erik Anpin. Leishach b'menem no shev ruach chayim, the hachios of the chayim is Erik Anpin, because this is where breath comes from. I'm as I say, the breath, because this is the source of breath. Asher b'menem no shev, it's so from the nose of Erik Anpin is the source of the breath that comes into Zer Anpin. The hachios for the chayim is Zer Anpin. Below rucho lo iskayim, but if there's no breath coming from Erik Anpin, v'chafilu kan be'ez ivor. So even talking about now, where Zer Anpin is really inside of Ima, be'ivor Zer Anpin b'soch bet and Ima, gam kain I afshel la'over lehiskayim below ruach chaim sheshor shehu be'oz hey dechaydim Erik Anpin. So an ivor is alive as well. The embryo. This is a raya to some of that thinking. He says he after la'uver lihiskayim below ruach chaim. It can't live. It has to have the ruach chaim too. Sheshor be'oz hey, which has a root in the hay of the chotim of the nose of Erik Anpin. V'amar ol bebir. So further in explanation, so oz hey demilu yehi. So let's talk more about it. He said milvad mashu romas lochetim Erik Anpin komor. So besides what? What we're learning about the nose of Erik Anpin and what goes on there, so the main thing that we want to see by the Oz Hey Mora al Ima is really, we understand, is about Ima. So he said, Behei ishtaklo. Ki Be'oz Hey shall Ima. Nishtaklo Zer Anpin is joined into that Hey. For who eager kiyum Zer Anpin, and this hey is really what sustains Zer Anpin. That's the concept of Ima. Shahare achshad b'shas Eva, because now is the time of gestation. Nimsa Zer Anpin b'soch bet and Ima, we find that's where he is. He actually his kaim klar below Ima. He can't stay at all. He can't live at all without Ima. Now let's try to understand what we're talking about here. He's like al yedecha be'iman nimshach shefa min yud elyon de Erik Anpin. This is how the flow goes. is that through Ima comes the Yud, which is represented by representative Eric Anpin, the upper Yud. L'kayim as their Anpin. In other words, she receives that, it comes into her. She's like a basket in that sense, and she receives this Yud that's coming from Eric Anpin. She gives it into Zer Anpin, Kedugmas Amshachos Ruach Chaim Al Yodech Osei, which is the concept that the Osei itself breathes a breath. Shal Chotim Eric Anpin canals. This is the same idea. This is that Ima is part of the system that brings this Ruach Chaim into Zer Anpin and keeps him going while she's gestating. V'zera v'sod Osius Milas Yehi. Now you have the secret of the word Yehi. She'Yuda Elyon the Eric Anpin Mashpia Al Yedech Osei the Ima Shefa Kiyum the Yud Shefa. For the purpose of sustaining life, the Yud Tachton the Zer Anpin, with now is going to become the manifest Yud, more manifestation of this name in Zer Anpin. Now there's more here. Hey Ilah, hey Tata. So there's also another. We know there's a lower hey because it's Yud Ke Vav Ke. What's going on? Kibos hey El Yonu Shal Ima. When we talk about that. Nirmezes gam os hey tachton nirshal. It's also a reference to the fact there's another hey. Ki hine gam anukva nis bebetin ima, because also the nukva is becoming impregnated. Bebetin. Excuse, I said it wrong. She's gestating. Also, she's there too. So he said because we know she's a Basil Labar, she's an aspect of Zer Anpin, and it's stuck onto him. She's also impregnated there, or growing there. Together with Zer Anpin, so he said, so therefore, the nukva, meaning Malchus, is also represented by the letter He, Shal, Milas, Yehi, that word, Yehi. So he says, of Os He, Achas, so he says, this one letter He, Ola Lishtehim, it really works for both of them. Hein the Ima, the Hein the Nukva, because the He is what? Once again, it's the receptacle. So now let's talk about this. He said, if you have the concept, this secret of incorporation of Malchus in Bina, Harishteh Hein the Ima, the Nukva Achasi Hein. So, what is he introducing to me here? This idea that there is a hiskalos of Malchus, she is inside of the womb of Bina. That's where she's at because she's a part of Zer Anpin. Ki besod hiskalos Malchus bebina, that whole idea, Harishteh Hein the Ima benukva achasim, they were the same letter. They said, what is she like? She's like a child of a duplicate. Dechsev Gomosha Kosev Ata Admi Elokem. Pirush Milas Ata. Excuse me, I read it wrong. I'm sorry. It's a pasuk from Yoshua. It says Aha Admi Elokem. Now Pirush Milas Aha. What does Aha mean? It means an aleph and two hays. So he says Romans the sod his kalavish de'ahein shall be malchus. So we're talking about a concept of the uniting of the two hays together into one. He says it's kalo shtei hayin shal bina umalchus, where they both come together, because originally the hay of Ima surrounded or fed in some way to the lower hay. The Hemshek pasuk causes, then the pasuk goes on and says like this: Shnei Shemos Adni. We have these two names, Adni v'Chavaya. The Nikud Elokim, both of them were the Nikud of Elokim. Behind Loki, Shtei Hein Elu, Heim Malchus besod Shem Adni, Ubiner besod Shem Havaya, Benikud Elokim. Zechavanimsa Mavur Khan, so we're explaining here this. Kishem Mamala, you want the complete name, the Milu Yehi, which is represented by the concept of Yehi. Kolochem Eric Anpin, Vizer Anpin, it's the incorporation of Eric Anpin into Zer Anpin, the two Yuds. That means the two Yuds are like together. Anpin besod Shtei Yudin canal. But now, Vehem Bina, and also you have Bina and Malchus besod Osei. So the way I hear the way he's saying is that the same way that it was not hard for me to say the phrase out that the Yud, which is hidden in Eric Anpin, is manifest in Zer Anpin, and then I could think of all of that. Now he's saying also that the Hey, which is the womb, which is a different concept, because womb is a base kibble, whereas the Yud is more like seed. So you have the male and female there, but the female works the same way too, in some way, to understand how the base kibble concept is also up above and down below. Now we go to the next one. It's called Osios Yaakov the Eric Anpin Vizer Anpin. So there is a Yud K Vav in both. He says Lamada Barosh Eric Anpin. Let's go up there. Yesh Shlosha Makomos. There are 3 different chambers or places. Shehem Sel Chachma Bin Das. So then you have Yud K Vav. The height of the Makom Arishon who. So now the question is like this. But Akit Fui the Katvin. Ubagulgolis the Eric Anpin in the, now he said we're working on this phrase, Kipur the Katvin, right? So he said this place called the Kipur the Katvin. So he says in the Gulgolis of Eric Anpin, that's one of the Kipur, I guess. No, the Katvin is the Gulgolis. Shehi El Yodam Bishar Gulgolis, which is higher than any other skull, the Partsuf and Matachtoinim. And here, in order to be able to understand this, you have to look at it sideways, because they're all duplicates or of a one template, which is this one. But when he says that it's higher, it's El Yonim B'Shar Gulgolis of Partzuf and Dartainim, means it's more panini to them. It starts the first. Bo Nimsa Kuna Devira. In that place, you find this other aspect, which is called the Kitufoi. Okay, so it's a hard word for me. Nimsa Kuma Devira. She is now he's going to explain that as we're getting into that place. The Nafik La'achia. Os Hey Elyon de Eric Anpin. So now we're talking about the upper Hey of Eric Anpin. Misater Beruach Hayotze Menikva Hachotim. So what happens is it becomes a crown, a misater, by the ruach that's coming out of the nose of the chotim, sheyotze the hakios of the kayim is their anpin, so it's all kept alive through that. So he says the word achia means to bring life. So this is talking about the second place, which is a concept, of bina. The honor of, and it says further, there's a vav here. Vav law boots in the denusa. So it's va'oz vav, which here he's using, and he's saying that it refers to das. So the oz vav al yonu, the Eric Anpin, who sold the das, and nikra boots in the dekar denusa. And I didn't think that was true, that das would be called the boots in the dekar denusa. So he said, but that means the main constricting force. That's what I translated that previously, I think. It does mean the flame of contraction, or the lamp of contraction, Hagana's bepad the Eric Anpin, which is hidden inside of the mouth of Eric Anpin. He's putting the das of Eric Anpin, or the das of the skull, inside of the mouth of Eric Anpin, the isater besitroi. And then it becomes, what does this mean? Misater becomes crowned, b'sheish kitzvos shal das, with the 6 kitzvos of das. Now this is the 6 kitzvos we always use to refer to Zer Anpin. So I see that more than once he's substituted these 2 places because he wants to say that das is really the beninius of Zer Anpin. It's really coming from das. So they're related. But this, you're working on it. Besitre mis'antach b'sheshus kitzvos shaladas. Now he says there's six different elements of the das. V'hu makom ha'shlishi. This is the 3rd place. Shuhu b'pechindas das, which is called das. No, but v'chochma being das. V'nikver kasher. It's also called by the name of a tire or a knot. The nikra kesher hamaskala. So the kesher is the binding of the balance scale. Okay, so it's the binding of the balance scale. I still don't have an understanding of why it's called the boots in the gardenusa, but we'll find out. Okay, let's read a little bit more. Mispashet azvan lebasar eloha osios. So let's take these letters. Yaakov. Shibarosh Eric Anpin, and they're in the head of Eric Anpin, which we just said. Shehim Sod Chochma being the Das. He just told us that Das has these 6 kitzvos. V'hei bebechinas mochin sheberosh. These are the mochin that are rosh of Erik Anpin, and mispashtim achar kach merosh Erik Anpin lamata, and from there they move from the rosh of Erik Anpin, these mochin, which is part of the substance of the flow that's coming out of Erik Anpin. He says they start to move out from the head of Erik Anpin, the Yordim derek chuta shidra, and they go down through the spinal cord, as if now we're saying that there's a spinal cord there in Erik Anpin. Guf Erik Anpin, and then from the spinal cord they spread into the entire body of Erik Anpin. This is the concept of the origin of the three lines. V'is kalale b'zer Anpin, and they wind up congealing there and incorporated into Zer Anpin. He said, so now they're all over the body of Erik Anpin. And Zer Anpin, which it said previously, is born out and attached to the Tibur Lamata of Erik Anpin. Azayin nimshachem mechem osios Yaakov v'cheres. So now comes flowing out. After this is spread, the Yaakov has gone all the way through the body of Erik Anpin. Another Yaakov comes out. Ve'elah osios acheres mispasha v'nechlala b'zer Anpin, and these are for Zer Anpin, and they're going to spread into him. Beside his pashtos osios Yaakov b'zer Anpin, so we have these two sets of his pashtos. So this is the concept of this Yaakov, the three lines now moving all the way through Zer Anpin. Who could Derek say this pashtos be'Erik Anpin? So it goes the same way that it's spread in Erik Anpin. At the Hainu, Kama desharyach begolgolta the ishtakachum mispashtar bekol gufa. So like we say, the concept of that template. Kamosha be'Erik Anpin maskil makom osios Yaakov lamala begolgolas Erik Anpin. That's where it begins in the skull of Erik Anpin. But between this mochin sheberosh, which is the concept of the brain matter in the head. V'achakach mispashtim lamata bekol guf, and then after that, it starts to spread downwards into the entire body. Kachu gam b'zer Anpin, so the same way that it goes like this, it starts in his gulgolus, in his skull. Shemaskil l'mala b'gulgolus Zer Anpin, b'bechinas mochin. So there it's mochin up there. V'achakach mispashtin l'mata b'guf Zer Anpin, and it starts then to spread throughout the entire body of Zer Anpin. Amnam yesh chiluk bein mispashtis osis b'rosh Erik Anpin, the hispashtos of the hispashtos, let's get the osios barosh Zer Anpin. So he says it's a difference. So he says v'hu ki be'Erik Anpin ha'osios heim stumim ve'emen nimsalim. So there everything is closed up. You wouldn't know they were there. Ki heim tuluyim ve'helim. Everything that is about them depends on being completely hidden. But over here, we find the letters. There they are. That's why I use the word manifest. Now you start to see them. Ki inyan is pashas of mochin the osios Yaakov b'kol guf Zer Anpin. So you want to see that they're spreading into the entire body of Zer Anpin. Who could they l'shachlo l'saken, in order to make some kind of a incorporation to be able to build as called guf Zer Anpin is for the purpose of building the body of Zer Anpin. Mochin bonim masaktim l'kol the guf. We know that that's what the mochin do. The mochin are the builders. They're the life force. They carry the force that builds. V'gam hanukva, also the nukva Zer Anpin. Nichlala ba'oz vav shal Yaakov. She's also incorporated in that vav too. Shahare the vav. Let's take the vav. Hiba b'chinas Mucha das, which is the aspect of the Mucha das developing into this vav. Of the Mucha das nimshach gam gevuras the das. So in the Mucha das, you have both chesadim and gevuras the das. You have also gevuras of the das shehim chelik hanukva, which is nukvadik, which is for the nukva. The nimseki called bin the shechlal Zer Anpin naasa ba'osios Yaakov halalu. So therefore we said that all this Yaakov, which is now coming into the head of Zer Anpin, he says naasa ba'osios, and all of his growing. And the var be'ezech the ovim is pashtim b'mochin the osios Yaakov min Erik Anpin. So now he wants to discuss. I'm just trying to see where we're going. Okay, we could get over there. He says, Remuchin the Osius Yaakov min Eric Anpin El Zer Anpin. Let's talk about the movement. This to me is a very deep place. So he said that clean rule that we were talking about, the white head of Eric Anpin. He said everything comes from there. So those hairs on the top of the head, they go downward, they fall downward. Talian, Elin, Asvan. The letters themselves that we're talking about called Yaakov, he says, Azai Elu Hamochin the Osius Yaakov. He says that the Eric Anpin, Tuluyin Velnalomin Basaros Amarnake. Hallelujah. So he says they're hanging on to them, they're hidden in them, on or something like that in the hairs of these white hairs we're talking about. Because the letters themselves are more physical than the whiteness. And they full flow down, they stand downwards until the place of the makom of the hairs of the Rosh Zeranpin. So in other words, a direct connection here. Now, all he's talking about is really, I thought this is all coming from Ima, coming into his head from Ima. Now he's saying there's an aspect of the, again, of the hairs of Eric Anpin falling down, which we understand were put on fell and stuff like that, falling down and going with these three letters, or Yaakov, I'm not sure if it's the three letters of those, or it's the flow within the letters, I'm not sure what he's saying exactly. So let's go on. So this is another direction of Shefa that's coming directly from the most pneumistic aspect to Zer Anpin. Not going through Abba, Nima, etc. like that. It's a different flow. Kadizgali the Zera. Kishimizgalim Elohim Mochan the Osius Yaakov the Zer Anpin. So now they're inside of Zer Anpin and revealed Ayudecha Sa'aros Amarnake, because of the hairs of this white, of this clean wool. Misyashvan Be Elin Asva, and then they take position there. As Misyashvan, they set themselves the Yosef Yaakov Elu Bezer Anpin, and now the letters themselves are now seen. I guess when he's talking about the hair, when he's talking about the hair of Eric Anpin, he's talking just about how did these letters develop in Zer Anpin. He's not talking about the flow. There's also a flow of panemius that's coming from Ima, but he's talking about the letters themselves are planted through these hairs. So he said, the Iskri Bahon, Nikra Zer Anpin B'Shem Yaakov, and then he becomes them too, because they're now inside of in the letters, the forms of the letters. I'm not sure if it's the forms of the letters or what that means. The Haina Osias Yak, the two letters Yud K, Al Shem Mochim Chacham Bina, the Oz Vav Al Shem Muchadas, the Ha'inyan, who the Inyan is like this. Ki HaMochim the Osias Yaakov, that the Mochim that come from the letters Yud K and Vav. Elu, these letters, mispashtim b'kol guf zer anpin. So he says, what is it? Let me just make sure. He says the mochim, the osius. He says the mochim that are inside of the osius carry the mochim. He says, Elu, mispashtim b'kol guf zer anpin. They wind up going into the entire guf of zer anpin. The mochim, that is the letters, carrying the mochim inside of them. And they sit in it, and they rest in it. And this also brings about the completion of the four letters of the name Havaya. Because these letters, Yud K Vav, that are now appearing in Zer Anpin, and they're holding these mukos, or these mochim, these letters then are going to join themselves together with this os hey, the nukva, which he has said that she's some sort of there's a duplicate between Ima and the two hays are combined in a way I have to think about. And now you see that when the nukva is combined with this Yaakov, which is running all the way through Zer Anpin, that there's actually in Shlemus. Up above in Eric Anpin, you don't know they're there, you wouldn't know where it is. And that's really, he says, Einam Mizgalim Misyashvim, they're not there. the ha'osios tatuluyin bo rak b'holomov, and the only way that you see that there's the physicality of the construction of letters themselves is in a very hidden way. Because where the letters are coming from, is sort of, we don't know where Eric Anpin is. Because the main revelation that you get from the name Avaya, who Rak B'Zer Anpin, that's it. Zer Anpin is the manifestation of all that. And I think we got like 5 minutes. I think we're going to stop here, okay? So, is that okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Katuv.